Good day once again, and here's another session on research writing, particularly uh, a discussion on the mechanics of the preparation of the first chapter. But before we do so, allow me to have you for a walkthrough of some important reminders pertaining to titling, and other related matters. So we begin now with our discussion. Let me at the very first instance, discussed with you the characteristics of a good research. In addition to what we have discussed in the earlier sessions, let me point out the following. So, the research problem must have an element of newness or novelty, meaning it should be uh, something that will promise, okay, something new, okay. So that is to say that the study should not be overstudied or saturated, okay, such that it is a repetition or duplication of the procedures. We always remember that duplication or repetition in research is not uh, allowed. However, we may engage ourselves into what we call as replication. So replication is the process by which we uh, try to affirm or negate previous findings. Okay, so that's the first characteristic of a good research. So it has to have the element of novelty or newness. Number two, so the research study must be completed within a reasonable time. That's why um, I already have discussed with you how much time you have uh, to complete all the requirements in this particular course, including, among others, the submission of a satisfactory paper, both in form and in content. So we also have discussed part of our orientation, the timetable that we will have to follow in this particular course. So aside from being guided by a certain timeline, you should also note that it should be within the competence level of the researcher of the researchers. That's why we advised you to focus on accounting or accountancy research, considering that you are specializing in the said field of endeavor. And of course, it has to have value, okay, to the researcher and impact to the community. So something that will raise the quality of life, so they say, and that will advance the frontiers of your field of specialization, which is accounting or accountancy for that matter. And then the research study addresses priority development issues and concerns. So this is an extension of what we have for the earlier discussion on impact to community, such that it will be locally responsive and globally competitive. Okay, so we will try to, as much as possible, uh, zero in for our studies the burning issues, okay, and concerns related to accounting, accounting technology, and other related disciplines. Moreover, the research, okay, should benefit many and varied users and beneficiaries. Okay, varied users and beneficiaries like planners, policymakers, administrators, researchers, and others in government organizations and non-government organizations alike. Even in other forms of organizations like humanitarian organizations like Red Cross. And the research team or the researcher has to have the capability, okay, in implementing the project. So capability in terms of administrative, technical, as well as logistical, okay, capability in carrying out the research project. Okay. And in addition to the main discussions of the general characteristics of good research, it should be remembered always that each chapter heading must have a concise introductory paragraph, all except in chapter one. That's why if you will be asked to prepare your first chapter, it's the only chapter that is not having an introductory paragraph immediately after the chapter number and the chapter title. Okay, so I'd like to also point it out that the number, as in chapter 1, okay, should be in Roman numeral and not in Arabic. Okay, so the numbering in so far as the chapters are concerned should be in Roman numeral. And the title of the chapter should be all in uppercase. I'd like to repeat that. The title of all chapters should be in uppercase. So, in a similar way, you will need to have introductory sentence, okay, in all the subtopics of the first chapter and the other chapters, like the assumptions, significance of the study, and definition of terms. So all this you can find in the first chapter of the UL prescribed report. So what is an introductory sentence? An introductory sentence is a sentence or two that will explain or that will prelude, no, the said section, and by pointing out what's discussed in this particular section the uh, of the chapter. Okay. Similarly, in the fifth chapter, so you will also have a similar uh, introduction to be provided for the subtopic on findings and conclusions, as well as recommendations. Okay. So always remember that these sections or subtopics in the first chapter and the and the fifth chapter rather should have introductory paragraph. Oh, before I forget, also in the second chapter where you will have two main sections, so you will need to have two. You will need to have also introductory paragraph. Okay, in these two sections in the second chapter, right? Okay, so always remember that. So that will be for the provision of introductory sentence in the different sections or subtopics of chapters 1, 2, and 5. And then the research report should be presented in a formal tone, projecting a dignified, impersonal tone and objectively written. Okay, so the manner of writing should be formal. Okay, it should be technical. Okay, to be more specific. No, technical in the sense that the writing of accountancy research should be in accordance with the language of accountancy or accounting technology. Okay, it should not be highfalutin. Okay, except for terms that are really uh, germane insofar as accounting or accounting technology is concerned. So you are allowed to do so, but you are expected to have it written, okay, in the level of an ordinary individual, because in research you write to express and not to impress, right? You write to express and not to impress. So what's more important is that you put across a very clear message to your intended audience. Remember that your audience, okay, is should not only be focusing on accountants or practitioners in the accounting field, but it may also include other sectors that do not have background in accounting or accounting technology. The research report must be presented in logical, coherent, systematic manner and with consistent ideas. This is fundamental. You are writing the report in the English language, so you have to be particular about the way you construct your sentences, your paragraphs. It should also be in accordance with the mechanics, the syntax, and the semantics of the English language, and particularly the three principles in effective writing. What are these three principles? The principle of unity, the principle of coherence, and the principle of uh, unity, coherence, and emphasis. All right. So these are the three. Okay. So you should always be mindful about the way you discuss, okay, your report. And moving on to more specific characteristics. So let's take a look at how we frame the title of the proposed study. Okay. So for the title, it should be clear. It should be descriptive and correctly worded. What do we mean by clear? It should not be suggesting multiple meanings. It should be straightforward. It should be that which will give you, okay, a clear, okay, understanding of the entire study, and that's how important your title is, because it is the first thing that an individual could see or read in your report. So it is what reveals right away. That's why the title should be given much of attention, such that the title should embody, should reflect the entirety of of the study. So it should be clear. It should be descriptive. It will more or less describe to you the readers. Okay, it will describe to the readers what the study is all about and what it is for. Okay, so that will be for the uh, title. It should be correctly worded. Okay, so you should be also aware of operational meaning. Okay, operationalization in the conduct uh, of research, particularly in providing the title of which. It should be reasonable. It should be reasonably short but comprehensible. So what do we mean by it should be reasonably short but comprehensible? It How short is short? Okay, how short is short? We are talking about 10 to 20 succinct words. Okay, the counting doesn't include the articles, the connectors, etc., etc. So it will only have part of the aforementioned range of numbers of words, okay, on the main terms that are used in the study. Okay, so it should be reasonably short but comprehensible, and then it must be printed in an inverted pyramid format. Okay, inverted pyramid. So just like this. So oh, my hyperlink is not working. Anyway, um, this is an example of uh, of a pyramid style of writing the title. So if you get to see the cursor, it's resembling an inverted pyramid. When the title is rather too long, you will need to split it in several lines, such that the first line is the longest, just like this one. It's longer than the second line, thus resembling an inverted pyramid. Okay, so that's how it is to be printed. Okay, so just like this one. All right, sorry. Okay, this one, it's inverted pyramid as well. Okay, so the first line is the longest, while the last line is the shortest. All right, so that's for the inverted pyramid style of writing the title. So this will also be observed in the titling of tables. All right, so always have that in mind. Moreover, the title should not be employing wording of an unscientific, rhetorical, emotional, or biased character or catchy title. It should be descriptive. It should be clear. Uh, it should be in accordance with your field of specialization. Okay, so that will be for the title of the study. So phrases like a critical study, an evaluation, an assessment, a study before the problem area is inappropriate, but they may be attached after the problem area before a colon. So, for example, this one. Okay, so you will need to do away with the title that begins with critical study, an assessment of blank. So it should be straightforward. The academic standing in college and the and the CPA licensure performance of the ULBSA graduates. And if you want to do so, you need to have a colon before the subtitle, a correlation. Okay, so that will be for the preliminaries, particularly involving the framing of the title of the investigation. Okay, so now we proceed to the first chapter. So the first chapter of the UL Prescribed report is entitled The Problem and Its Background. The problem and its background for the first chapter of the UL Prescribed format. So in the first chapter, we have about 8 to 9 sections or subtopics. So please write it down so that you can have your notes for purposes of review, okay, in the coming days. So we have under the first chapter, we have rationale, we have theoretical framework. Number three, you have your conceptual framework. You have number four, you have your statement of the problem. You have assumptions, uh, hypothesis, which is optional depending on the type of the study. Then we have significance of the study. Oh, sorry, scope and delimitation first before significance of the study. And then finally, we have definition of terms. Now, in the undergraduate report, okay, you may forego the theoretical and the conceptual framework. However, you will be asked to discuss partly in the rationale, which is serving the purpose of an introduction, the theoretical as well as the conceptual basis for your study, and a full length discussion of which in the second chapter. Okay, so I hope that everything is crystal clear. Okay, now we proceed to the discussion of the requirements and mechanics in the writing of the first section, the first subtopic of the first chapter. So the title, the side head title is Rationale. Okay, Rationale. So Rationale is the first subtopic of the first chapter. Okay, so just a very brief run through. Okay, so basically the rationale, as I have mentioned, will provide uh, the readers, okay, and an idea on the background of the problem. So it will give insights on what prompted or what gave the impetus to the researcher in coming up with a study. So you will need to describe the problem situation, and the discussion should flow from global to national to local and finally to the institutional level. That's the macro to micro description of the problem background, which is following the format of deductive presentation. So deduction is the process by which you discuss primarily the general uh, situation in order to uh, better understand, okay, the uh, the micro, okay, situation or the local situation. Then after and then you will need to support your problem situation as what I have mentioned earlier with theoretical as well as research literature. Okay, so it should be the discussion should be substantiated by theories and concepts, as well as related literature, okay, including legal evidence. We have documents like statutes, executive orders, and the like. Okay, so it has to be uh, the problem should be threshed out and it should be substantiated. Okay, so the researcher must indicate what is wrong. So you will need to present or identify uh, clearly, okay, the research gap. Okay, so you will need to clearly point out the research gap. Now, the research gap is that one gray area, so meaning it is something that is not addressed, okay, in the previous studies involving similar studies. That's why you are involving yourselves in a study that will reveal new or original ideas or new original knowledge. Okay, so that is your research gap. So the researcher should indicate what is wrong with the present situation and explain the desire to discover ways of improving, strengthening, or enriching the problem situation. Okay, and then the researcher should justify his or her study and show why the study is needed. Okay, so this is for the justification, so that which will legitimize your work. So it will give a boost, okay, to your aim in so far as pursuing the study is concerned. Okay, so that's for rationale. Now we proceed to the theoretical and the conceptual framework. As I have mentioned, these are optional, no? But you can have it tried out in your respective studies. After all, you will be doing still, no, the review of theories and the review of concepts, which you will have to discuss in the rationale and a full-length discussion of which in the second chapter. Okay, so the theoretical and the conceptual framework will provide the legitimacy, will ensure the legitimacy of your work by discussing uh, the foundation or the ground, the 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 basis upon which you anchor your study from. Okay, so uh, we have the theoretical framework and the conceptual framework. So the theoretical and the conceptual framework, you know, is that section in the first chapter where you will have to identify what significant and related theory or theories as well as concepts that serve as your basis in your study, and then you will need to explain why it provides the anchorage of your study. Okay, so for example, your study is all about um, financial operation. Okay, so you will need to identify what accounting or auditing theories will relate to financial operation, as well as conceptual models uh, that will uh, more or less give you a backup, no, in the better understanding of what will be the elements, what will be the requirements, what will be the important considerations insofar as financial operation in a business organization is concerned. So now comes a statement of the problem. So the statement of the problem should proceed from, of course, the discussion of the problem background, and then the discussion of the theoretical as well as the conceptual framework. Okay. So, by the way, the theoretical and the conceptual framework, okay, will have part of the discussion what we term as paradigm of the study. Okay, so always remember that. So please take note of it. So research paradigm is an extension of your discussion of your conceptual framework, and where research paradigm serves the purpose of providing the framework for your own study based on your theoretical and conceptual framework discussions. Okay, so usually a research paradigm is an illustration of how you uh, on how you will go about the process of doing the research study. Okay, an example of a paradigm of the study is your IPO model. Okay, IPO stands for input process output, which is inspired by the work of Kant and Kuhn on the systems approach. Okay, so That is for the paradigm of the study. So we have now for the next subtopic, which is the fourth subtopic in the first chapter, statement of the problem. Okay, statement of the problem. So the statement of the problem is written in two parts. Okay, and the first is for the um, main, okay, discussion on what the study is all about and why conduct the study. Okay, so the general or the major problem, okay, is what is being discussed firstly in the statement of the problem, and this is patterned from the research title, meaning it is consists of the answers to the questions what, who, where, when, and why of the study. Okay, so the general problem is capable of being broken down, or subdivided into researchable units. So the second part will now be the more specific, researchable units, okay, uh, which is usually in question form. So the sub problems, okay, referring to the minor or the specific problems, okay, uh, are researchable units logically arranged from factual to analytical order. So I'll have to have further explanation, in the coming days, okay, after the groups have presented their own initial proposals. So each subproblem must be grammatically worded in the language of research. Further, each subproblem must be statistically analyzed. Findings, conclusions, and recommendations could be drawn from it. So one subproblem should not overlap or duplicate the others. Otherwise, they are fused or merged as one. So that's one subproblem. So uh, please ignore the S in the subproblems. So subproblems should not be answered by yes or no. In some institutions, however, the yes or no type question is allowed when it pertains to the determination of significant differences or significant relationships. So I will illustrate this in the coming days. For now, allow me to just have you for a run through of the first chapter, and then have a more specific discussion as you undertake the task of writing the first chapter. So the scope and delimitation. Okay, so in a delimitation, state the variables or concepts, which are excluded, meaning what are not included. So these are the extraneous variables. And in a limitation, indicate the variables that are to be contained or studies. So the first paragraph should be a discussion of the scope of the study, such as the variables, concepts to be studied, locale and period of study, and the persons involved. Okay. So the second paragraph should consist the delimitation, which is as mentioned in the first bullet. Okay, the aspects of the study not covered, and the justification for the non-inclusion of some of these variables and concepts. Okay, the locale actually will be placed part of the third chapter. Okay, so please note of that. Then we have the significance of the study. The study, as mentioned earlier, should be promising some sort of benefits or advantages to some groups or sectors. And then you will need to identify who these sectors, what these sectors are, and what they will benefit how they will benefit from this study, right? So the discussion should be from the sector having the most advantages or benefits, okay, and up to the list. Okay, and then we have the definition of terms. So the definition of terms is a section, the primary intention of which is to level off, with your readers. This is not a glossary. This is not a section where you will have to place all new terms you have encountered in the study and define them after. So it will only feature those that are of great significance in the study. So meaning, initially, we have part of the definition of terms, that which you see in the title, and of course in the statement of the problem. So it will introduce your terms as defined or discussed in the study. So the terms that you the terms are defined actually in a technical manner, meaning in an operational way, and and in order to have this to aid, okay, or help your readers better understand your study. So there are two ways of defining terms in a research study. One, on one hand, it's called conceptual definition, which is actually the lexical meaning, which you have lifted from, of course, uh, universal references or sources like dictionary, okay, or authoritative definition in some of the books, in some books, in books rather. Okay, so you will need to, of course, cite the sources if so. While if operational, okay, it is the specific manner by which you define your terms as observed in the study. And terms are arranged according to their degree of importance or utilization in the study. So that sums up, okay, our discussion of the mechanics and the requirements of writing the first chapter and the subtopics of which. Okay, so that will be all for our discussion today. We will discuss more in the coming sessions. Thank you, everyone.